Hello and welcome back to The Savage Truth. I'm your host, Absolute Katy. Thank you for joining me today for my show where I talk about politics, media, truth, and perception. It's important to understand why television exists in the first place. Commercial television exists primarily to deliver audiences to advertisers. It's not there to entertain. It's not there in the public interest. Its primary directive is to deliver audiences to the advertisers who are paying for your eyeballs. Now, I want you to keep that in mind as I continue because it's critical to understanding the role that corporate media has in our lives. When I was a kid, I remember distinctly this one commercial for a toy called Skip It.
Skip it, skipping and a screaming and a bop to bop. But the very best thing of all, there's a counter on this ball.
For my birthday, I got the Skip It, and I was disappointed. It was a lot smaller. It couldn't fit two kids. Also, the counter was always inaccurate. But I learned a valuable lesson then. Advertisements are not what they seem. Now, a couple years later, I was lucky enough to watch a video that showed how extreme close-ups are used to make things look bigger, which is why I thought the Skip It was bigger. Video making and editing that made toys seem more exciting or more thrilling. That video gave me a new perspective on advertising and one that I never forgot throughout my life. So fast forward a few years, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 was signed into law by Bill Clinton. Now, what this legislation did was severely relax regulations on how many media channels a company could own. It made way for huge corporate mergers and acquisitions. Today, just 6 mega companies own 90% of the media that you see and hear every day. So it's this consolidation that has exacerbated what people call the corporate media. So what does corporate media mean? Is that media corporations all have a corporate structure, meaning they all have corporate goals, corporate strategy, and corporate messaging. Corporate strategy might be company X wants to pick up more of the LGBTQ audience share. Now, you could insert any demographic into this example. People who love football, Latinos, or women who work. Now, the goal in this example is obviously to create more profit. The more people that are watching, the more valuable that programming is to those advertisers. That company will then greenlight more shows that have LGBTQ themes, characters. They might pick up news anchors, personalities for daytime TV. Now, obviously, in this example, tolerance is good, but it's important to understand the profit motive behind it and how they use our emotions to sell us to their advertisers. So I want to elaborate on that a little bit because it's not just about profit, it's about financial growth. Because every quarter, these corporations have to present their earnings to the investment community. These are the guys that tell the big investment firms what tickers to buy or which ones to sell. If a company doesn't show growth or doesn't show a good reason for not having growth, these guys can lower the stock price. And lowering the stock price affects CEOs and board members and investors heavily. These guys own a ton of shares, so a dip in stock by just $1 could be devastating to their portfolio. Very rich people could become significantly less rich if they don't produce the kind of growth that the investment community demands. Nowadays, it's almost impossible to tell when an advertiser is speaking directly to you. Just turn on your TV and chances are you'll see paid promotions on talk shows or news shows, and sometimes word-for-word scripts delivered by newscasters as news.
In consumer news, economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny.
Also common is cross-promotion of a company's properties. If the ladies on The View on ABC had a serious discussion about what's the best time of year to bring your family to Disneyland, as a viewer you might think, oh, this is very helpful. Disney owns ABC. So it's a direct cross-promotion of their parent company, and all of it benefits Disney. And there's no disclosure of that fact. We've gotten such a barrage of these messages, these coded messages over our lifetime, that a lot of people just think about it as normal, or they don't think about it at all. There is nothing normal about a company and advertisers telling you what to think about, what problems exist or don't, and what to buy to make you feel better about yourself after telling you to feel bad about yourself in the first place. Now, if all we had to worry about were advertisements for Hot Pockets and maxi pads, it wouldn't be that big of a concern. But the fact is, we're also being sold war. Companies like Lockheed Martin and defense contractors are some of the biggest war profiteers, and they're the same companies that fund corporate media via advertisements and paid placement. Many of these companies rely heavily on contracts with the US government. This means that their growth quarter to quarter in those earnings calls relies heavily on the US going to war. This also means that it's critical that war is seen by the American people as justified. So when you see a company like Lockheed Martin advertising in corporate media, it means that the corporate media, news outlets, shows can't say anything negative about Lockheed Martin. The same corporate media can't say anything negative about Lockheed Martin's primary source of income, war. In the news, you won't see people discussing the merits of not going to war versus the merits of going to war. And they'll discuss instead how we should go to war. Should we go to war sooner? Ally with these people to go to war? How many troops should we send in? Should we go to war at all? Is just absent. And this is exactly because of the conflict of interest between advertisers and corporate media. Every day, this false narrative is sold to you by the corporate media. Trustworthy people on TV tell you what to think about. And massive corporations make shows that appeal to your emotion in order to sell you to advertisers. Advertisers, in turn, promote products and ideas that go completely unquestioned and even applauded, including about war. And the media is so pervasive and so deafening that if you question any of it, if you have a different opinion other than the one that's presented, you're made to feel weird and fringe. Like nobody's saying that. Nobody thinks that. You're weird. Fortunately, there is something you can do about it. Stop consuming corporate media. Stop trusting those overpaid line readers. Seek out and support, yes, with money, independent media outlets that don't take money from advertisers or investors. Talk about the corporate media with your friends and family. You might be surprised how many people feel the same way you do, but we're afraid to discuss it. Honestly, even if you have friends or family that are on a different political spectrum, you might find some common ground. And anything that brings people together around a common cause is good in my book. That's my show, The Savage Truth. Once again, I'm your host, Absolute Katy. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe and tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Absolute Katy. And always, think for yourself.